YouTubers. So in this video, we are going to learn how to pollinate a Cattleya. Okay, so first thing you're going to need, obviously, to pollinate a Cattleya, you will need a healthy Cattleya specimen. Now, fresh flowers are ideal as opposed to flowers that have been open for a longer period of time, but you're more than welcome to experiment with your own plants, especially if this is your first time pollinating a Cattleya. You can just get the hang of using a toothpick and playing with the pollinia and sticking it onto the stigmatic surface. So for the purposes of this video, I will be using my Cattleya Orchid, which has just freshly opened up. Now, if you're wanting to save the flowers, if you like the way that the flowers look, then you're probably not going to want to pollinate your Cattleya, because as soon as pollination occurs, the flower will wither and die. Now, in choosing a Cattleya or orchid to pollinate, you want to choose one that is healthy. You don't want to choose one that is unhealthy, because the chances of the pollination being successful are very, very low. Now, your ideal orchid to pollinate is also going to be mature in size. You don't want to select a seedling to use that to pollinate with, unless you're using just the pollen. If you're just using the pollen, then you can use a seedling. It won't affect the health of the plant in any way. But if you're wanting a pod parent, if you're wanting an orchid to carry the pod for you, then you're definitely going to want to use a mature plant. Otherwise, the success of pollination will be very, very low. So let's just go over the parts of the orchid that will be used in the process of pollination real quick. That way, when I start the demonstration, we'll know what we're talking about here. Okay, so of course we have our Cattleya flower, and we are going to open it up a little bit just so we can see it better. So hold it back. And then I actually like to lift the flower up so I can see what I'm doing. So here we have the anther cap. Just behind this anther cap are the pollen sacs, or the pollinia. So the pollinia are what we're going to be using to pollinate with, and just underneath, if you guys can see, just behind that anther cap is the stigmatic surface. So right there, and you can actually stick your toothpick, is what I use to pollinate with. You can stick your toothpick in there and feel that it is tacky or sticky. And if we look to the side of the Cattleya flower here, this is the ovary. The ovary of the Cattleya is where our pod will form. So this is the area to look for when you're looking for swelling and whether or not the pollination was successful. So this area right here, if pollination is successful, will begin to swell. All right, now that we know the basic reproductive parts of our Cattleya flower, we can go ahead and take our toothpick and just gently remove the pollen cap, and you can see that the pollen has actually come out onto the lip of the Cattleya here. Okay, so you can see the size of the pollinia here on my toothpick. Very, very, very small. So when you have your pollinia on your toothpick, you're just going to gently insert it onto the stigmatic surface. Alrighty guys, so here is our finished product. It pretty much looks the same, except for on the bottom of the anther cap, just on the stigmatic surface there, you can see the little yellow bits. That is the pollen that we just placed onto this flower. So now the next thing that we're going to want to do, so that we know what we pollinated and when we pollinated, we are going to make a little pollination tag. This is what mine looks like. So this is the name of my plant, Cattleya Orchid, and then it is going to be by self. If you're using pollen from a different Cattleya, this is where you would put by such and such, whatever Cattleya pollen you're using. But because I used the pollen from the same plant, this is now the pod and pollen parent, so it is going to be by self, and then I put today's date, and then we're just going to attach that to the flower that we pollinated. All right, and then we are going to keep track of this and make sure that the pollination was successful. Usually within the span of about a week, no more than a week, we should know whether our pollination attempt was successful. And if everything goes according to plan, this is what you should end up with. This is actually a Cattleya I pollinated back in November 28th, 2015, and you can see the two parents that I used in this cross. So it was not a selfing. It was RLC George King Southern Cross by Cattleya Pat Thrall. So George King Southern Cross is the first one in this tag, so that is the one here. This is the pod parent, and then the second name that you see there, that is the pollen donor. So pod and pollen parent respectively. And here is the pod at this stage. It is absolutely beautiful. I just love it so much. I don't know why, I'm just fascinated by this pod here. It looks like some sort of like guava fruit or star fruit or something like that. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And you can see the dried remnants of the flower. And then interestingly enough, this was all white, and then as you can see, it turned green. So here is my pollinated orchid here. Now, just something else I wanted to show you guys. This is another option. In case your Cattleyas or other orchids aren't blooming at the same time, which more than likely they won't be blooming at the same time, your option is to harvest the pollen, and using some wax paper, you can make a little envelope and store the pollen that way. So in this envelope, you can see the pollen right there, and then right there. This is Laelia anceps, and I harvested on December 19th, 2015. I actually just keep it right here in my little butter compartment, and that's how I store it in my fridge. Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of those fun things. And until next time, I hope to see you again.